the movie is unstoppable. From page 3, the train's moving. And it just gets faster and faster and crazier and crazier. It's non-stop action.
It's coming straight at us.
My goal was to shoot everything as real as possible, and that in terms of my stunts and as little CG as possible. So therefore, I had real guys on top of real trains rather than CG trains or trying to, or blue screen or green screen it.
Tony, he has a very specific dynamic that he really likes. It's very bold, strong imagery, and he has a very particular style of shooting that lends itself to this sort of high energy type of movie.
The train is the star of the movie. Chris Pine and myself, we're just sidemen for the train.
What I always love is that challenge of having a character-driven story in the midst of this beast, which looks like it's doing 100 miles an hour. So it was a great vehicle for me in terms of editing and getting pace and momentum. The whole movie is inspired by a real event, and so that's what I'm always looking for: real people, real events to inspire me creatively.
I was never really much of a train person. I sort of was interested in them as a little kid, like a lot of kids, but I was never a real rail fan or anything like that. And I quickly became fascinated, and I get why people love them. They just seem like an interesting setting for a film that, you know, there's been films obviously set in trains, but not in a while, and I thought this was a new way. It was almost so old school, it was new school. You had an antagonist that's unthinking, that that there really is no villain in the story other than this machine. And then my mind just started running with who those two guys could be.
I knew Mark Bomback and loved his work and approached him about it. And right away, within 3 sentences, he got it. He said, I know exactly what this world should feel like. And he brought a lot of shape to the characters. At first, people don't know what they're dealing with, and then it becomes more and more suspenseful. But what Mark Bomback and I did together was find ways to make the characters feel sort of another ordinary day in their life becomes extraordinary.
I had worked on the script for about 2 years on and off before Tony came on. It was the only time in my career, I'm sure it's still going to be the only time in my career, where when I gave the first draft to the studio, they said, we have no notes. We're just going to start trying to put this together. 2 years later, Tony got a hold of the script, and I was called by the studio, and they said, Tony really loves it. He has some thoughts about how to make the first act go a little quicker, but we don't think it's going to be a lot of work, And so we got on the phone, and he said, yeah, I think it's really good. I'm a little concerned that we should probably do some more research, but, I think the first act is, needs to be tightened. And from that point on, we never stopped working on the script. The entire script changed more. I have more drafts post-Tony in the 6 months that we worked together before shooting than the 2 years that preceded Tony.
First thing you do, you read the script, and I said, wow, this is one of the scripts that was the fastest read I've ever had, and I'm a really slow reader, bad reader. And I couldn't put it down, I just did that with it. And then I think what my first read, what you're now seeing on screen, is a direct reflection of that first read. That's what I felt about the movie. That was my vision of the movie then.
Oh, so you mean, so I couldn't see him? The problem is I couldn't see you.
He really got my attention when I went to go visit him, and he's always prepared. And he got all these trains, he's met all the people, he's got all the goods. He'll just hook you, and nobody outworks him that I've worked with, and so he makes it real easy.
I meet the people, I see the world, I see the trains, I get a sense and a feel, and then with all my research, I then bring it back to my writer, to Mark, and say, this is what we, and I took Mark on that journey with me. I took Mark on my research trips with me. I took him on the journey to meet different guys, to see the world, see the train, stand on a track with a train coming past you, at 80 miles an hour.
He is obsessed with research. He gave me just a huge education on really how you research a film. While I'd done a lot of research, I would now look back at it and say it was sort of perfunctory, that you really have to get in there and spend weeks with these guys and see what it is that they do.
With Mark, we saw right from real life with real guys that we met. And it was the guy who Denzel's character felt the Chris character got the job because of nepotism, and he was a pretty boy, and Denzel was just being fired, and all that came from research. All that came from the real world, and Mark. Often writers don't like embracing research. Mark loved it.
You can be as creative and imaginative as you want, but you're only coming out of your own experience, which in my case is completely sheltered from what it means to be a guy who works on the railroad. So some of my favorite things in the script now came out of that research period with Tony.
He collects so much stuff. All I got to do is go through what he has, you know, books and photographs and interviews with people. And then that allows me to just take a big stack of stuff home. And then when I got here, whatever it was, 3-4 months ago, just getting behind the wheel of the trains and learning, you know, what they're all about. I mean, I can drive them now.
Before we started filming, me, Denzel, and Tony and Mark spent hours and hours and hours and hours talking about character and the arc of the characters and the arc of the story and how the different scenes fit into the very specific, you know, arc of these two men's journey. So I felt secure in the fact that we'd prepared for a long time before we got to set.
The locations are very specific to the story. As we're going along the journey, we're getting into much more heavily populated and industrial areas, so it was really critical to find all those things. And I think that was another really logistically challenging thing, was the sort of jigsaw puzzle of locations and doing pieces of the movie in all different places.
Typically what Tony does when he first starts filming is he puts images together. He originally started out wanting to look for the Montana look, kind of the great look with mountains and open plains.
When I did my homework at first, I started to pull together pictures and cut together footage from Montana and flat open spaces, but in the end, it felt like the wide open spaces didn't have the danger, and it didn't feel as right as shooting in Pennsylvania, which had those deep wooded valleys. And that time of year, wide open spaces would have been a little more surreal, but less dangerous.
Once we started investigating tracks, and Tony did some very early scouting earlier in the year, a lot of it from helicopter, and it all looked fantastic from the air, which is inevitable. But then we discovered that all the good track was all obviously working track, and all the track that we wanted to get speed out of was track that's used every day. And we were looking to basically shut track down for a month, and trying to find track that we could run at, you know, speeds of 40, 50 miles an hour. It's very, very difficult.
They told us where we could go, and Tony had to then get his vision from that, because there were so many variables when you're dealing with a railroad.
These train companies are not used to leasing to people like us and of course we work on such tight and short turnarounds. Getting all the lease agreements, getting all the lawyers together and getting all that done was just, they'd never done it so quickly. We were painting up until the night before we started shooting, so there was no rehearsal at all. Not only did we have the shooting schedule, there was a very tight rehearsal schedule, and the guys doing the driving of the trains, you know, they'd never done stuff like this before.
The number of people that you bring to an endeavor like this is absolutely amazing. I mean, the trucks and the people and the crews that come in here, everything is planned out like an army general. This is really a major logistical exercise for the movie people, as well as an artistic exercise. You're merging the two together, you know, logistics and art, and hopefully coming up with a film.
Clear, stand by to shoot, thank you.
Trains incoming, guys, trains incoming.
I felt that the strength of the way I was shooting this movie was to shoot everything for real, which is a logistical nightmare, logistical headache, because we've got a train which is half a mile long and it's doing, 50 miles an hour.
For Tony, he's obviously done a lot of big-scale action movies in different worlds, and I think he was really excited by this world, that this is something that he could uniquely approach and that we haven't seen trains in this situation before. I was really excited by the fact that he wanted to keep it very real and very based in reality. There's nothing in the movie that isn't either based on actual events or within the laws of physics and reality to happen.
What's interesting with Tony, and working with Tony before, is I know everything he wants to do is in camera. He wants to shoot everything practically, use as little CG as possible. So I think the challenge there was, you know, racing trains, a lot of action, a lot of stunts. You know, a lot of our prep time involved trying to figure out how to, you know, shoot stuff as much in camera as possible.
I looked at every derailment, I think in every movie that's ever been done, and none of them I was always disappointed. And the majority of ones I've been looking at had been CG or done in sections or against green screen. And I said, I don't want to do that. I want to do it for real. The way the sequence was actually built and designed. Joe Pancake and John, when you look at the sequence, it looks monumental, but it was so simplistic how they did it, and it was just logic. It's like a basketball hoop with a dick on the train. When that dick gets into the hoop, there's an explosive device that pulls the train over, and they cannoned, you know, one side of the train that pushed it over the way it was being pulled. All a huge piece of choreography. I think the biggest piece of choreography I've ever done. I only had one shot at it, one take.
A basic shooting team consisted of 4 ground cameras, 2 helicopter-mounted cameras, at least 1 camera, often 2 on our Porsche Cayenne tracking vehicle.
It's a high-speed camera car with a gyro-stabilized remote control crane system on top and gyro-stabilized camera systems mounted to the car.
This is our portion crane from Pursuit Systems. We're running 2 cameras on it, 2 camera operators, 2 ACs, just to double up on the footage.
Makes it a little crowded inside, so we have 6 people actually inside the little car.
Roll, ready to gain, ready, and go, Mikey, go. Arm down.
You got this crane arm with this camera on the end of it, and I've got an insane driver who's, you know, wannabe NASCAR driver, I think. And I've got all the boys. I've got Brooks, who's there as my operator on the wheels.
This is the first movie where every day is tracking. I mean, it's a train driving, and the whole movie's about the train moving. So there's an awful lot of tracking shots in this.
A typical day with Tony starts in the morning at a little table, and he has little Matchbox toys that he actually places down. He has helicopters and cop cars and little trucks. And every morning we go through the storyboards with the lines, the dialogue that he needs, and he methodically goes through every shot and every setup.
Camera left for you for the start here, okay. And then you should come down here, stay off camera left. What it did for me, I've got a camera car running alongside the train. I've got 3 or 4 cameras, but there's no movement from those cameras other than long lenses or in and out the zoom. Whereas the ultimate arm of the Porsche gets that arm can get with a 30-foot extension, can get in places where it could never get with a wide lens, or it'll boom up or it'll crane down.
We can run up to a mile away, half a mile away, and be going 100 miles an hour, and you have all these trees going in front of the image, the camera, and it just helps with that sense of speed and peril.
We had all the toys. We had helicopters, which are fantastic. These guys, when you see it, they'll say they're going to be CG helicopters. They're real.
Tony loves his toys. Tony loves helicopters. He loves helicopters so much that if you say the word helicopter, he either starts smiling or he starts jumping up and down in place.
I think we got that one. I think we got that one, yes. So now it's helicopter.
Say this was the right film to shoot from a helicopter because you have a piece of machinery that's traveling vast distances very hard. And with static cameras or even moving cameras on tracking vehicles, you just don't have the scale of movement that you can get from a helicopter.
First one is the high rail, yeah.
We've been on this show for 10 weeks, which is very unusual to be on a show doing nothing but aerials for that length of time. And then to have 2 helicopters that are going every single day as both story ships and camera ships, I don't think it's ever really been done before.
Right from the point that the train got away, I said, let's have a news helicopter down and in there. Let's have a helicopter which is a spotter helicopter, and then a second news helicopter comes in. So it's 3 3 helicopters in all, and they did this ballet and this choreography, and I can hear them all talking, talking to each other on my ground-to-air radios, and I'm trying to communicate to them what I'm after.
On this setup, he's going to get close. He's not going to slam and bang.
Dave Knoll and Alan Perwin and Fred North are just, I mean, these guys are like on another level in terms of helicopter stuff.
The helicopters they're my guys, you know. They've been with me a long time, and those guys, they put helicopters in places that no normal human beings can, but I always feel they're safe. I always feel they've got something in reserve.
One of the parameters and the thing we have the ability with these particular camera systems is the stability of the Cineflex itself, and we're using extremely long lenses. These are 42:1 zoom lenses, so in film speak, it's about a 24 millimeter to start with, so fairly wide, but I can go all the way into a little over 1,000 millimeter using the same lens, and that makes everything rush by quicker. The background rush is quicker, the foreground rush is quicker. With the lens that I can get tight enough that you can see it's the real actors, and that's part of what Tony's having us do, that we can get down there, and they have Denzel on top of the train, and he's harnessed and he's got cables, everything is safe for him, but besides the coverage that they're getting looking up from the ground, we can get stuff where we're right next to him because we're the only ones that can get at that level.
That helicopter guy was crazy, but he was like doing a slalom between trees, following us. I mean, he was literally going between trees and up and down and all around.
Here the guys were, Alan and Fred, they're ducking and diving and coming in. They were, I can't tell you how close they got. Sometimes the skids are a foot away. Often when they shut down, there'd be greens hanging off the skids or off the rotor blades. But those aerials were absolutely amazing.
It was a massive contribution to the movie, what they could do from the air. In a way, for me, what they did was three-dimensional camera work, where often we were restricted to 1 or 2-dimensional work. And it's the best way to see it. They could work in a volume of space around the train where we could only work in a sort of linear way with the train. And so, we had them with us the whole movie, and it was absolutely the right decision.
This is a Tony Scott film. He's a kinetic filmmaker. His movies always have movement. He loves shooting these 360 shots. So in the cab, we had this buck made where it was wide enough on the front where you could have a camera just go around and around and around.
We shot a lot of the dialogue scenes from it, but it allowed us to film 360 degrees around the actors while they were driving. And the buck was engineless, so it was towed or pulled.
Tony's visual style fits perfectly with a movie like this. It's all about building tension through, the movement and the placement of the camera.
One of the interesting things about doing a film like this for real is that you're hanging off the train, whether you're strapped on by a piece of rope or standing on top of the train doing 60 miles an hour going under a tunnel with mounts on top, underneath. We were strapped onto this thing in one form or another the whole way through the movie.
What I really enjoyed is that he loves to shoot a lot of cameras at once, and what that allows the actor to do is play the scene, and you don't have to stop and then get coverage. You do occasionally, but for the most part, you let the scene play out. And there's one camera that's on a wide, one's punched in, and one will start punched in and go out. And it's a testament, too, to his incredible camera department that, we have some of the best focus pullers in the business and operators, and it's just, it only works because we have these great guys.
Everybody knows the process, knows what I'm looking for, knows the goals I'm trying to achieve, and a lot of those guys have been with me 20 plus years, and it's a great shorthand. I love input because all my guys are the best at what they do, and whatever input they give to only make the movie better.
Okay, good. Yeah. So now hold on, pan.
You all right?
It's the hardest film that I've ever done. You have scenes that are itty-bitty scenes, but they're linked together. They happen right after one another, and you shoot a film over 4 months or so, and to get a sense of continuity, to build continuity of character, to build a character when so much of the film is action-based, is extremely difficult.
Connie? Just let them know we're going to be coming in real hot.
There's a rule of thumb. As you get deeper into the movie, the shots on the train become more dynamic. I mean, I use helicopter as a counter track. For instance, coming to the curve at the end, other boys who are counter-tracking the train, so it looks like the train's doing 150 miles an hour coming head on at you, you know. So I paced myself and saved myself in terms of the momentum and the danger and the energy of that train. You know, it felt like it was growing in speed.
Watching how Tony is shooting this has been really remarkable. Sometimes you look at these scenes and it seems kind of small, like, okay, you're going here, highlight this, you know, it seems kind of small, little inane, like expositional sort of just letting everybody know what world we're in kind of stuff, but the way that he's shooting it just builds all of this energy.
It was seamless. I could cut from one tracking shot on the train or one long lens on the train to another tracking shot of Rosario, and normally what I'd do, I'd count and say, so we did the sequence on the train going right to left, I'll do Rosario left to right.
It really builds up, like you start getting out of your seat, and I call that like that sort of stunt acting, where it's like it cuts to me and, you know, they're jumping on trains and they're doing all this other stuff and I'm just sitting in a room on a phone, but like how do you make that work? So you just go, oh, you got milepost 57 yet? You know, you gotta like, I gotta be out of breath even though I'm not doing anything.
Frank 777 just passed milepost 58.
It's really important to have that guy in the seat who's directing this and going, okay, how am I gonna blend these performances together so that people will believe that we are in this together at the exact same time.
1206, you there?
1206, over.
Frank, you're right.
But you know what I do when I shoot movies? I create paint that goes on my palette, then goes on my canvas, which is in the editing room with my editors, yeah. When you think about it, you've got this great story unfolding between these two guys, and then you've got this cross-cut, this insane piece of 100,000 tons of steel that feels like 150 miles an hour, cross-cut with Rosario, who's trying to figure out what's going on, where and when. It gives me a great opportunity to mix and match the quiet and the insanity and the performance and not knowing.
Is the company planning on derailing 777? Last I heard, Galvin was dead set against it.
Good. You got one more and you're good. Excellent.
We call the train the Beast. The Beast is the third character in the movie. And the Beast gets away and it's on the loose.
It's like a high-rise office building moving at 40 or 50 miles an hour through the country.
In terms of the use of my sound, I gave that energy and that danger because I made this the Beast. It had a voice of its own, and we stole from animal sounds as well as production sounds.
The 777, it has a great quality of the ultimate movie villain. It defies every system that's put into place to stop it. It seems to have a mind of its own.
The train is the third main character and should get top billing in the film.
Everything on a train hurts. Heavy steel, there's nothing soft on it. Everything can crush you. Everything. Crush your feet between cars if you're not careful.
It's a hard, rough, tough environment. Even walking, I have a difficult time walking on the ballast. It's very uneven. It's hard to get your footing.
Normally when you do these kind of things with a train, you probably maybe have one or two trains and a couple of background trains. But we ended up having to lease, I think it was something like 11 trains. We were leasing 4 777s, and then we had 4 1206s. Then we had a consist of 25 cars for the 777, plus all the doubles. So essentially we had our own railroad.
The locomotives that we're working with, what we call the Hero train, which is a 1206, is an SD40 locomotive. The locomotives that we are using for the runaway train, they're called AC 4400s. They're a large road locomotive, and they're AC powered as opposed to DC powered like these are.
Doing all the various different jobs, we ended up having to make them so we can blind drive them. With the 1206s, we ended up with one that we called the Buck, which basically we bought a scrapped SD40s, took the engines out, took all the fuel, everything out of it, cleaned it right out, and then where the engine was, we made a production center in the back of the train, and then made that the cab was all wild so we could get in and around it, adding decks all around it for camera, for lighting, and all that kind of stuff. Then we then had another one, an exact copy of that, which drove itself, but then had the ability to be able to drive it with a remote unit so that the driver could be either on the train or off the train. When he was on the train, we then had to make a position for him in the nose that he could see out, but we couldn't see him.
106 in the Buckout. My job primarily is operating the locomotives with a remote control. The remote control box is what I use to control the train with. It has all the features that a regular control center has for the locomotive engineer. One of the challenges with this job working with the movie is being able to attain a maximum speed for the film and then hold that constant speed so that the stunt people and the actors can get on and off the moving equipment as safely as possible.
We turned over the railroad to the movie people between 0800 and 2000 hours during the day, which means that our own operations are now conducted in the overnight hours. The movie crew has essentially total possession of the line during daylight hours. Movie trains are operated under our authority. We are still a railroad, and legally we're responsible. So the trains that run have our crews along with the movie crews, and all of the movement orders and the dispatching is done by the railroad.
At the end of each day, we'd have a meeting and kind of discuss what we're starting with, what was the important elements, what we needed from the trains, where the trains were going to be, because we were shooting over miles and miles of track.
I think the biggest lockup was 10 miles of railroad track, yeah. But in that 10 miles, I'd say there must be 20 crossings, from private houses or actual street crossings. So you've got to be really careful that the general public, somebody wasn't coming out of their own driveway and going across, not paying attention.
Not very many train films are made in the way that Tony makes a film, and he wanted to do so much of it practically. And there's a lot of sequences where we needed to get trains on the same track close together. So we ended up having to make or devise ways of getting parts of trains onto, like set pieces, onto the track that we could control. So we ended up making bits of 1206s and bits of 777s being pushed by these big high rail vehicles.
And cut! Good. That's nice.
All you guys coming ladies and gentlemen, Chris Pine's last day. Last shot, ladies and gentlemen. And mine too, but young lad.
My fifth movie is done.
That's right, our fifth movie together. That's it.
So Frank and Will are done!
This movie has got pace, momentum, and fear. It's what I call an edge of the seat movie, much more than I've ever done in my life.
These guys have been out there shooting this train from every angle imaginable and possible. Helicopters swooping down and really sort of pushing the limits of what could and should be done.
This is the toughest movie, both creatively and physically. Logistically, it was hard trying to schedule this train to run so I could actually get coverage on my boys.
Doing things for real creates a raw energy that's fantastic.
When you put actors in a real situation, it's so much easier for them to feel and touch and access who they are and the situation, because everything was surreal.
This sequence is a major sequence that Joe Pantlick and John Fraser choreographed, and this is it's a derailment, pretty much to real trains as you possibly can get.
far as I know, no other film has actually filmed in camera a train derailment. The railroad guys are just, you know, it goes completely against everything that they've trained their whole lives, which is we're going to purposely derail a train.
You can do it with you know, special effects, or you can do it with models and stuff, but for me there's nothing like the real thing. I think all my movies reflect what I do. I always put the audience in the seat of the real vehicles, in the seat of an airplane or a race car, or in this case a train.
The derailment sequence, we actually brought the 2 locomotives out a month ago, and we've spent 4 weeks here. It was transported here, it was assembled on the track, and then we had to do some art direction. You know, we had to add all the little pieces that make it look like a locomotive.
We made the lower half of the trains back in Hollywood, all the brakes, the mechanics, the engines. We brought those out here to Emporium, Pennsylvania, and we've taken the top of the other trains that they scrapped out of Ohio, and we've fabricated those to the top of our chassis. What that does is that it basically makes a complete train.
In this is an FL-70 Freightliner. We bought a complete truck from Ryder Lease Return, chopped the middle of it, shortened it up 85 inches or so to the proper length for the train. So this only drives on one out of the 12 axles. The real train drives all 12 axles. But all we have to do is maintain speed to get to the event and flip it. It's geared down to do 46.7 on paper right now.
We have fiberglass panels that mocked up the chassis of the train. These normally cast iron chassis, and we took and made them out of fiberglass to give you that bulk and that shape.
Instead of being 400,000 pounds stripped a piece, 800,000 pounds to roll, we're going to be in the neighborhood of 125,000 pounds. So instead of almost 1 million, we're 125,000 pounds that we got to flip over. Huge advantage. On the day, we'll have our coordinator in this. He'll have 3 cameras to look at, forward camera, backup cameras when maneuvering, but his 3rd camera will be on the catcher. Here is the catcher. Now this catcher is going to encounter an 1.5 inch ring of cable that is attached to a dead man perpendicular to the track. And when it catches it, all the spikes are on it, so when the train flips around, it doesn't come off. We still got a hold of it. Train runs in, grabs the ring, and as they go through the arc, of course, it starts pulling the train off the track.
One shoot that one this way, so one this way and then that way.
Yeah, depending on...
So keep, you mean the orange mark?
Yeah.
Good. And keep that one looking this way, like you got it set up, yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
I believe there's 14 cameras, and they're placed in various locations. Some of them are operated. A lot of them are going to be lockdown shots, because obviously when the train derails and jackknifes and slides, we really, you know, they can estimate with engineering and physics how far it's going to go, but you really don't know how far it's going to go.
This is Joe Pancake and
Richie Schwamp.
Richie Schwamp. These are the guys that are going to drive the train. That'll teach them. Yeah.
We drew the short straw on this one.
You got the short straw. So what's going to happen? Joe and Richie are going to crank it up to 80. Joe and Richie are going to crank it up to speed, starting a mile out, yeah?
We're a mile back, yes.
They're a mile back, and as they come through here, Joe's going to do his thing here, which is hook the eye of the needle here and blow this, correct, Joe? Cars are going to come off the track and slide, and we try to guesstimate where they're going to end up.
Train is moving, Tony. Train's moving. Stand by, you're going to give me the roll.
I'll give you a visual.
Visual and tell us to roll. Right, guys, we're ready for the cue to roll here. The train is moving. Okay. Stand by.
Brooks, you're going to run with the action, you're going to overtake the action, and I'd be reluctant to try and slow down. It's almost like you're pivoting around. And then in terms of helicopters, it's a similar deal. You're just trying to get the point of impact. Fred, you're like that. Alan, you're coming over the top, and we're trying to get counter 180s like that once it's happened.
20 seconds. 20 seconds away. Should we roll now? Here we go.
Yes, roll.
Roll.
If the camera's not rolling, we're not aborting. Don't even come on the radio. If your camera's not rolling, your camera's not going to be in the movie. We're not aborting this shot.
Once the train starts rolling a mile away, where is the point of no return?
If we run to that corner, we're not stopping. Tony,
well done.
Did I fuck it up?
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
It was picture perfect.
That looked great.
We stretched every safety thing we had to the max.
Yeah, I got out and noticed the cable was a little taut. Yeah. But you know what? I tell you what, it worked because we felt that, but we didn't feel that. It's just like we almost
that's the
slid
thing
to a
about it. When I was looking at it, I thought I saw the arms go up, and I'm expecting to see a jerk, and it was just
It
picture
slid
perfect.
to a nice, gentle stop.
Yeah. It's almost like, why am I standing here? There's two locomotives coming at me.
Yeah.
I'm watching the 6 o'clock news here. From the original concept, Tony didn't want the train just to fall off the tracks. He wanted it to jackknife and slide. So it was like a two-part effect. First I'll get it off the tracks, and then the second part, I'll snatch it and pull it sideways. So for the first part, we built what's called a moment arm here. What you're looking at is a big arm, and it's got a nitrogen cylinder on it. And we put about 1,000 pounds of pressure in it, and then when Joe Pancake got to a mark, which you saw the big target, he pushed the buttons, and he just pushed these down and lifted the train off the tracks. This is the whole key to it right here. This little piece of metal right here pushed against those tracks. If we didn't have this on there, it would have slid.
We're going to continue this tomorrow. We're going to re-rig the trains, configure them for Tony. So as we time it out with the 777 coming by, we're going to add an explosion to this as well.
I think the general public are very savvy. They can feel when something's for real and they can feel when it's manufactured.
He just obviously likes it for real. He likes it to look as dangerous as possible, but obviously as safe as possible, and that's what we try and achieve.
That's great to see your position now. It's great.
Then everything else matches.
When I shoot my stunts for real, I don't just shoot close-ups and coverage. I shoot wides and I get long lens and shoot tight. So when we're doing those stunts, I'll do a stunt run with the double, then I'll do a run with Chris, and then I'll do a run with Denzel.
I think just the two combinations, the way he works and the way I work, we're a good match because I don't like to overdo things.
It's my first time working with Guy, and he's English, comes from my home country. He'd done a couple of movies on trains, in terms of rigging and stuff.
I mean, I've been sort of quite lucky because I've worked on trains before, so I come to this with a little bit of train knowledge of what you can and can't do on them, which helped me quite a bit.
Gary's, he's a master in terms of how he choreographs that stuff.
You just want to get in there and do the best job you can, and if he's happy, you're doing a good job. Obvious way to get at a moving object that's doing 70, 80 miles an hour is to come in by helicopter from the air. That idea came from research, and I said this would be a great punctuation in the movie to actually try and blow this guy in and see if he can actually climb aboard and shut the train down. And actually the guy that we used, he just came back from Afghanistan after 2 tours. He was a real vet, and he'd only been home a week. He couldn't believe he just got off the plane from Afghanistan, and he's in this major movie. We had a 60-foot cable that suspended a double for the lion's share of the sequence, and fortunately he had a helmet on and goggles on, and then we did close-ups and we actually we got Ryan up, the real kid just got back from Afghanistan. I said, do you just want to do it on the ground? He said, no, I can screw that, I want to get up in the air. So we put him up in the air on the end of the cable.
What you're doing is good because you're looking down, like saying, down, you're looking for, down and look straight back up, and then down again, trying to guide him in, looking down, said left of it, right of it.
For me, it was a frightening stunt, a really scary stunt, because you've got a helicopter, and it was an old helicopter, a Huey, which is not as nearly as maneuverable as the helicopters that we use today. And the stunt guy was suspended on the end of the 60-foot cable, and they're going down these avenues of trees. We had to cut back some of the trees so it was a little clearer, but still you got all this play on this cable, and then we had to come up and over cables that they wouldn't let us remove it. And I did a limited number of takes because I was so worried about the kid on the end of the cable getting hurt. After the vet lands on top of the train and the trains make contact, he gets flipped backwards, so he bounces over the top of the train and ends up by going through the windshield of the second loco. But we did that, we broke that down into 3 separate parts. It was the actual land, when he came down, touchdown. So we shot that, with a variety of cameras, close-ups, wides. And then I came out and put a camera on top of the train so the feet land. And then we did the first part of the ratchet. So Gary had to build these rigs, these towers on either end of the train, which is like 120 feet long, I think. So we built these towers, and then we ratcheted him back, but we did it in 3 steps. We had the first part of the ratchet, and then the second part when he tumbled, and then the third part when he came off the first locomotive and goes into the windshield of the second.
The Iraqi vet stunt going across the top of the train is quite tricky because you are firing someone across the top of a moving train, and again we have our towers up. You take all the precautions you can to make it safe, but at the end of the day you still got to ping someone 20 or 30 foot across the top of a train, so you have to sort of do it carefully and plan it all out and break it down so it's, it's as safe as possible.
All needed for somebody who's not to be concentrating at any one moment, so I was relieved when I finished that sequence. Coming into the back of the train, I wondered, how can I make this more exciting? And when we were scouting, I saw these grain cars sitting there on the siding, and I said, got it. So the idea was it comes in too hot, and when it hits, it fractures the seals, which is possible. And that's where you had this grain storm.
Fire! That's the deal. That's the deal for the wide shots, brilliant.
But it made it that much more exciting, and I nearly panicked and nearly didn't do it because it was such a major headache, because the actual grain car itself, we had to put big fans inside there, and we had to put explosive devices, so when it first hit, there was this huge explosion of grain, and when I say it was grain, it was actually sugar puffs and potato flakes.
So right now we're getting ready to dump all this cereal, blast it from our air movers. We have our air compressor back there, 2 air movers up here. We got a guy on each air mover, and we're gonna be blasting Chris Pines with cereal.
I think I got 10,000 tons of sugar puffs and potato flakes. And everybody kept saying, well, how are you going to clear all this stuff up? I said, well, you watch. And sure enough, all the deer in northern Pennsylvania loved us, because every morning we come to the track and it was all gone. All the deer and the possums, they were fat cats. They loved sugar puffs and potato flakes.
Just grain, no potato, yeah? Just grain, no potato.
But it was major, because every time he did that hit, he had maybe 30 seconds of maximum burst in terms of the impact of the grain, supposedly, and coming out. So I think we did it 3 different times. The first time was terrible, and then the second and third time were humongous. But we learned from each time how much more explosives we needed, and what the mixture should be. Should be more sugar puffs, or should be more potato flakes, and they ended up 50-50.
We're actually having Chris hanging upside down in between 2 moving trains, which I'm sure he's not enthusiastic about, but he's going to do it.
Tony wanted me to do the fall, which would mean being harnessed in, obviously, but fall into the gap, and then, you know, the selling point of it is that my head almost hits the ground. The only thing that's keeping me up is my leg, which I promptly said no to. But I talked to Gary about it, and there's no way for me to do it without it being, I would have done it.
He has to hang across the knuckles, which are in the middle of the train. And that's technically the most dangerous part, because that constantly sort of breathes in and out. And like, as the story is, his foot gets trapped in there, and you could actually do that. So we've had to build a little plate that goes over that, so he can actually put his feet on there and be totally safe if the train moves in and out.
Gary Powell is a tremendous stunt technician, so I trusted. They prepped it for a while, they knew exactly what they're doing, but there is that moment when you look over and the world's speeding by, and you know that the difference between you and being a vegetable is about 5 inches is a little scary.
That intercuts with what we've done with the stunt guy, where he's pretty much in the same thing, but the stunt guy didn't have the stuff on the knuckles because we were filming that. And he does the whole fall, and he snaps down, and he sort of lands like 6 inches above the track, hands flying around and all that.
So you'll see in the film his leg gets caught, scream, and then he falls, and that's Daniel, and then you'll see my head pop in the frame. But that alone, you know, it's like you have to be, you're strapped in between 2 million-pound train cars going 40 some odd miles an hour, and your head's over all this rocky ballast.
No matter who you are, it's not something you'd want to wake up and do first thing in the morning, sort of thing. So I'm sure he'll have fun though. What we're doing now is we're doing inserts to Denzel Washington's character Frank running across the top of the hopper cars. So we've got a little set piece over there that you can see, so we can film through it. We can see Denzel climb down the ladders, start turning the brakes to apply the brakes, and then climb out of shot. Then later on today, we actually go with Denzel running on the top of the real train.
"50 miles an hour. I'm running across the top of a train, hanging off the side of it. I want you to know it was really me up there, hanging off the side of a train. I was standing up there, we're picking up speed, and I have to run across the top of it. And I'm going, what am I doing? With a helicopter flying about 10 feet over my head behind me.
Sometimes those blades are a foot above Denzel's head. And, you know, that's what happens when you shoot a movie in that way, and for real, you get real performances. You know, you get those guys, you have to say, watch this tennis ball on the end of this arm and try and motivate.
They had a low platform train first. They put me on that to warm me up.
Instead of putting him on the real one where we can't get good camera access and all that, Chris Seeger's built a set piece which is slightly lower, where we could get easier access for everyone, and also a little bit more comfortable for Denzel to be on top of it.
And then I ended up on top of it. You know, trains are taller than you imagine.
That was scary. Scary for Dee, scary because he's 25 feet up in the air, and we're doing 50 miles an hour, and those trains at 50 miles an hour, the consist had to be empty. You know, the heavier it was, the slower I went. I wanted to go faster, obviously. You know, but this thing's flapping around like this. So, but we had Denzel on leashes. We ran a leash either side of him, so he could actually run on top of the train. You know, but if you slip, he wouldn't slip and fall and hit the deck. And the same with the stunt guy. But it's hairy when you're standing up there and you're doing 40, 50 miles an hour. For big wide shots, where I actually got D to do a run, because even on the wide shots I'd get my long lens that I could get in this close on Denzel running, and then get Denzel out and get the double to run that same section of track.
I did it though, didn't I? Did I do it? I did it. I hope you got it on film. All right.
This is the track we're using for the very end scene where the train gets stopped. So over the last few days we've had Denzel on top of the train and Chris jumping off the train, driving alongside the train and jumping back on the train. When he jumps back onto the train, we had his stunt double again, Daniel, doing that. We sort of had different scenarios for the way we was going to do it. You know, you could have a cable onto the train. But because of the way the road is, it's a little bit tricky, because we can put a cable from the train to the guy on the truck, but at some point he has to jump, because obviously the road and the train track separate, and also being it as a train and the road sort of widens and narrows where we can actually track alongside it. If for any reason something went wrong with a truck and he was attached to the train, it was physically dragging off the track and then alongside the train, which would be really bad. So, you know, with the rehearsals and that we've done, we actually found it was actually more safer for us not to have anything at all and physically do the jump, which is, you know, it is a dangerous thing, but you rehearse it and it's fine. It looked freaking great.
The guy that was my stunt double was incredible. He did it like 5 times, slipped off the first time, was being dragged by the ballast on the ground and had to, you know, just use his upper body strength to get him. I mean, I'm no hero, I'm no stunt guy, so I was, he did a tremendous, tremendous job.
It's about a 6-foot jump, and it's nice because, like, as he lands, we have him sort of grabbing the railings and slipping down, his sort of foot dragging, which is like enhancing the pain that he's sort of got from it being crushed earlier on the train when he gets his foot caught. So, you know, shot it a few times from all the different angles that we have and it looked great. And then we have Chris sort of overlapping that, then he's on the truck, but he's like, you know, he's physically on the truck, flying alongside it like 60-odd mile an hour, coming up to the front of it.
I had a full harness on, they strapped me in, and I just hung on for dear life as the stunt driver drove down this wet road, was making curves to make it look like it was more dangerous than it actually was. None of it was scary up until the point where I get up onto the toolbox. I'm about to fake jump, and I'm attached, but I'm leaning off the thing to kind of mime jumping off. So as I'm going to pull off, fake jump, the car guy swerves. So there was a second where as I'm jumping, I basically catapulted off, and the only thing that caught me, thank God, was this harness. That's when just the little teeny weeniest bit of urine ran down my leg. But it was, besides that, it was, you know, it was a lot of fun.
It's actually one of the rare things nowadays in filming where a real stuntman does a real stunt and there's no CGI involved at all, sort of thing, you know. It's like, that's the proper stuff. Real stunts, real stunt people doing real stunts. It's great. Old school, definitely.
Like a sign seat?
No, right?
Definitely.
I didn't. I know. This for me was physically and mentally the toughest movie that I've ever done.
Cameras rolling and action!
But it was tough, but I love that. I love the fact it's a challenge.
crew spread out over 45 miles.
It was tough in that respect. We were in 5 different locations, and we're there in Pennsylvania in September till Christmas, you know, doing a movie like this, you know. But that's when you see, you know, what I love is actually taking a different challenge in a different world and trying to capture it for real. And that's what we did on this, obviously.
I think the first out-of-body experience I had was the first meeting at RSA, and I come in and it's Denzel and Tony, and we're sipping Pellegrino's, talking about maybe doing a film together, and shook hands and we leave, and it's the moment you get in the car and you realize that you've just talked about maybe doing a film with Tony Scott and Denzel Washington. So for me it was, you know, I'm living the dream. It was just an absolute honor to get a chance to do it. I can't even, you know.
It's so interesting because it's like, I got super excited. The same thing, I'm like, I'm gonna do a movie with Tony Scott and Denzel Washington again. It's gonna be so great. And I laugh because this is the second movie we've done together, and in both films we only had one scene together.
But we talked much more in the other one.
I know, we had like our one big chunk, yeah.
That's right.
I wonder if you can help me. I can't decide which one of you two I'm gonna kiss first.
Connie. I have a real problem when I read a script. I just breeze by all the action and I get back to the scenes between the guys. So I didn't even think about it until it was happening. It was like day 5 of the grain storm and I can't breathe and I'm picking stuff out of my nose. That's when I think I really realized what I got myself into.
I know when I first read it, I was like, well, why is the other guy like the hero at the end that jumps in the truck? I'm gonna jump in the truck. And when I saw that first train, I'm like, no, I'm the old guy. Let the young guy come.
Action, the action!
What you guys read originally, that was the best page turner I've ever read.
Yeah.
Because I was the same. I flew through it. And then when we started at home, the characters started to talk to the real guys, and they told us about their first day together. The first day that they worked together, and they did that. They went nose to nose, so we took that first day and reverse engineered into the script. So all of a sudden, the characters became stronger, and the action took care of itself. So it's like got this forward momentum, and it never gives up.
I loved it when I read it. I thought it was super powerful. I think that was one of the things that attracted me to the script, though, is the story that's in it of the people who are dealing with each other, and the relationships are very strong and very provocative for people who are strangers to each other.
That's what always inspires me. Is always the characters I'm inspired by and touching a world, you know, that I've never touched before in a different way. That's the engine of the movie, and the characters got honed, you know, based upon Dee and based upon Chris.
To build that arc of 2 guys that are getting into a cab of a train that don't really like one another for their own reasons, it really has nothing to do with the other person, it's just the incredible amount of shit that they bring to that day. That was really tough. And it was a matter of, because, you know, there are little 8th-page scenes that, like, you have to build, and if you're doing it out of order to create the...
Yeah, where are you?
It was difficult. And also then to find moments of being able to connect with the other guy, and that's, you know, I remember that with Tony a lot, is, you know, throughout the takes, we'd find different colors to make sure that we covered ourselves so that when Tone got in the editing room that he could then really help us build that arc.
And it really is so interesting to watch a dynamic where there's not anything necessarily personal that you dislike about each other, but almost as if you did. There's like, just reading it just comes off like there's straight kind of antagonism that's going on between these 2 people, but it has nothing to do with any personality or a backstory, just literally your position.
Right.
And what the other one means to the other in relation to your work and how important that is.
I'm always inspired by the real world and real people, and that's what has always driven us as well, because we've always looked and tapped into a different aspect of your personality in the characters that were driving that story.
Which aspect of my personality is
in this one?
The afraid guy.
No, the guy next door.
The guy next door.
My process is that I'll never just jump from like one movie to the next. I always take a little bit from the last and rebuild it. But I'm always trying to find ways of how I view the world, how I view people, and how I handle it. And that's what's exciting. Just to repeat yourself and repeat formula, for me is when I say it's boring, I am inspired to actually attack a different world and different people in a different way every day. So that's all I'm doing. A movie like this, an audience senses and feels when you're inside the real elements, you know?
What's our speed?
We're under 50.
The technology today enabled me to shoot this as real as possible And I love shooting in reality. Every setup, there's positives and negatives, and I always try and capitalize off those negatives and say, okay, I should be doing a little bit more of this or more of that. But you get an energy that you can't get. You know, and me doing a movie on stage, doing a special effects movie would kill me because I get ideas all the time as you're doing it, you know. I remember we flipped the train, we flipped the real train. People wanted to do it CG, but honestly, it was cheaper to do it for real.
Really?
Because those trains were old, and it was actually cheaper to do that. You know, CG was very costly, and so it was hard to do.
Did you end up buying those trains?
Yeah, but Chris, those trains, they were on the scrapyard, and so all they did, the boys, you know, the effects guys, they put their own engines in, and I say when you see that flip, it's brilliant. So it's really hard. You look at CG, and even no matter how great it is today, it's still, you feel you're missing the heart and soul. You feel something's wrong. My mum always just said to me, she's 95 when she died, she'd still say, that scene doesn't feel quite right. And it's always because it was CG'd or something, because, you know, CG, whatever. Now this is, you think about Avatar, how brilliant it was, but still in a movie like this, an audience senses and feels when you're inside the real elements, you know.
You had that platform where you had the round dolly shot, and you put the cab of the train in there. I saw this helicopter shot, and it came in, and it's super far away. You're on an elevated track, and then you built out this sort of, I think it was just on a flatbed, and then they put the cab, and you see the two of you in it. So it comes out from super far, this train, and then you get super close, and then the camera comes in, and I can see your faces in there doing the scene, and it was just the most amazing thing that you were getting all of that in one shot from the helicopter.
Yeah, those helicopters were brilliant, weren't they? Those guys were down in there.
They were close.
And not just where they were in terms of, when you see it,
it was
not
just
where they were, not just where they were for camera, but what they got with their lenses. And the lenses today, I'm in like this, and you guys, these going, they can't get me close on me doing this.
They got me picking my nose?
We got you picking your nose, you got, and
yeah,
Chris,
big NASA lenses on.
They were right in there. I was lucky that I had all those toys to be able to shoot it as real as possible. So we had helicopters, had camera cars all running at the same time.
It's such an interesting way to shoot a movie and work on them. You end up 12 cameras rolling at the same time. And you also used a small digital camera, right?
Yeah,
a Canon.
Cameras everywhere. Yeah.
A Canon to get the tiny one.
That's a good thing, though, because what it does, it doesn't interfere with, I think, you can tell me, but I like not interfering with your process and give you as much leeway to do what you want to do. That's why the cameras are back here. And I'm always criticized of being indulgent, but indulgence is good because it enables me to do less coverage. Coverage is always, I think, is a killer in terms of when I'm going to come back in and do this and that. Rarely do we have to do that. So it gives you more freedom to do what you want to do and build off it. So that's why I like building those long takes as well. As I like doing with you, and the longer the takes, you find your rhythms and and I don't know how. I've never seen other directors work. I've never been on your set. They've been on my brother's set. Never been. So I don't know how other guys actually work. It's all got a different process.
It just gives you more options when you get in the editing.
Right.
It does, Chris. But at the same time, I think, and JJ works similar to me, doesn't he? Abrams.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. So what it does, it also enables you guys to get long takes. You get and I watch you formulate and build and shift and change and so that using all those cameras gives me all those options, you know. And and also I stay out, I stay back. Yeah.
It's really interesting because I tried to have as much of a feeling for what you guys were actually doing because I didn't have any of that. I didn't even have the training that you guys had like training because you're really running on top of these trains.
That man was.
You didn't run on top of the train?
No, you did, man. I got the grain.
You hung off the side of it. You got
I did some hang, I did some jumping.
No, not cornflakes.
The fiber, like
the kashi, the kashi
beautiful.
turned to mush. That was fun.
Rainstorm.
But I think we shot me running first.
Yeah.
Of me anyway. You shot Chris with the grain.
Yeah.
You should actually had me get up there later. After we did that, the ending thing and throwing the punches and all. By that time, I was much more relaxed. You know, after you had gone all the way up, we had done all your. By that time, we could have gone. I was gonna bring it up then. We could have gone back and shot me running along the top. I was ready.
Down then you were cooking.
I was ready. Yeah, I was good by then.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't that bad. You know what was in retrospect was more the helicopter behind me because he kept getting closer and closer.
Man, they were right on the line of.
They were right on the line.
And that one shot that we did when he was just kind of swooping in, I was like, whoa.
You got a vehicle out on the road traveling 50 miles an hour, the train traveling 50 miles an hour, and then he pulls up in the helicopter and stops so that you can see him between cars, and he keeps himself right there so he can see the camera. Then you see him do this, because he would pull up like 8 seconds before the tree line and then drop right back down. He was crazy.
He's got the best instincts, both those guys.
No, he was
they know
excellent.
exactly where the camera is. Alan and Fred, they know exactly where the camera is, so they're always in the right place. And then, you know, then the stuff with you on the top is blowing past you.
Blowing
then
past.
with Chris, he just sat there alongside Chris and down in that brainstorm.
Man, and there were power lines, trees, and he's like right by us.
Now for me, it's the scariest movie I've done in terms of my responsibility for somebody getting hurt. So every day I've got to work.
And nobody did, not a soul. Huh?
Nobody. Yeah.
I mean, the most dangerous thing that happens is that we lost the train, right? Towards the end.
Well, you know, did you hear about the guy when he jumped into the truck and he almost fell?
I know.
No.
I heard. My stunt double.
Oh, your stunt double. That was an amazing shot.
He jumps from the train to the truck.
But in
slips.
the one that I saw is he jumps and then you see him slide down and his feet kick
and his
up
feet
on
are kicking up.
Incredible.
And he said it's great. I love it.
I know, right? Only a stunt guy.
Right.
Stunt guys. It always cracks me up because you do so much to kind of create realism when you're making a movie, but then you got to make sure you wet down the street, or you do something that's a movie trick to just give it that extra so it can really captivate an audience. And like that train, it was just like going 6 miles an hour, and it felt like the whole world was shaking. Then you start filming it, and I remember hearing you saying over again, does it seem like it's going as fast? Like, how do you translate that, the power and scale of this thing?
It was going that fast.
Because it was, you know what I mean?
When I was running up top, it was going 50 miles an hour. Like,
But Rosario, notice what you said, that in the end, I kept panicking. I'm thinking about how fast I get these trains to go on this track. And in the end, once I started shooting, it didn't matter if it was doing 40 or 35. It's the weight and this mass. That's what you feel. So it made me lens it as I'm progressing in a different way. So rather than, I'd always make sure I got my wide coverage, and you feel this body and this mass coming past you. It's like Jaws. It's like this beast. We should call it the beast. That's what it's the beast. So it begins with the beast and ends with the beast, and there's his characters in conflict on this journey.
and there you have it.